Good good afternoon, doctors. Myself, Shubhojit, on behalf of Harmonica Division of Acumentis, I welcome you all for today's webinar, which is on high-risk pregnancy by none other than Dr. Sadhna Gupta. Uh, I need not introduce about Dr. Gupta, but still a word or two, which I feel one should know all that she is the Foxy representative in Suffolk 2018 to 2021, which is indeed a great achievement. Then, of course, she is the president of Gorakhpur chapter of ISOPAR, basically, and of course, also on the ICOG governing council member. And she is a senior consultant and gynecologist practicing in Gorakhpur. She has been one of the exemplary member of the Foxy and has done a great work over the last few years. So before I hand over to Dr. Gupta, I just would like to take maybe 1 or 2 minutes talking little bit about the company Acumentis. As you know, Acumentis is in the women's healthcare and doing very well over the last few years. Our main forte is women's healthcare, and if you have seen the journey or noticed the journey of Acumentis, we have been in the business of introducing products for the very first time in the country. Whether it is your Dynogest, which is our Dynofirst, whether it is your Fibroease, whether it is online BOH, and so many other products. And in fact, Acumentis was known to introduce products for the first time. And we still maintain that there are still few products that were lined up to be introduced for the first time in India this year. However, because of the COVID scenario, we have postponed it a little. But I can assure you that Acumentis has in its kitty a lot of good products, which I'm sure you will like, and we will introduce as and when the situation little bit improves. As regards Acumentis, of course, women's healthcare, I have told you, our primary aim is to become one of the top players in the women's healthcare. Apart from that, we are in cardiology, we are in diabetology. So that's another of our A. We are in dermatology also. But yes, women's healthcare, you can say we are among the top 3 to 4 players basically. And yes, apart from our sales and marketing, which we do in India under the brand name Acumentis, our parent company is Acumes, and our 15 plants are located in Haridwar. All are WHO approved, ISO 9001, 9002 approved plants. And I am very happy to tell you today Acumes does 12% of the Indian pharma production. In fact, most of the products that you are using, Acumes manufactures at its Haridwar plant. So we are a big manufacturing house. You can say that is the major business of Acumentis, the mother company being Acumes. And of course, now the sales and marketing wing, which is Acumentis, is also doing well. So over to Dr. Gupta for today's topic, and I'm sure it will be an enjoyable one because one of our subject areas is high risk pregnancy. Please have a great time in the topic high risk pregnancy. Over to Dr. Gupta.
Thank you, Shubhajit, and I do a warm welcome to all the people who have joined to this webinar. In the COVID time, we are having a lot of webinar, and I thank each of you to be with us this evening. So we are today talking about high risk pregnancy, which is actually one of the main concern of every obstetrician and gynecologist, whatever way one is practicing. So it is about me, and coming to this, that what is the obstetrics is special about it, what is for our field, that we deal always with the 2 human lives at any given time. And this is one of the very, very important thing, that no pregnancy is without risk. Pregnancy can be low risk or pregnancy can be high risk. And when we provide antenatal, intranatal, or even postnatal care, we have 2 aims. First of all, we have to ascertain maternal and fetal well-being, and we have to surveillance that this mother and this fetus is not going to having any problem, any adverse outcome. So determination of risk to every pregnancy is vital to ensure timely action so that we can minimize the perinatal as well as maternal morbidity and mortality. We can plan out our way of the care. It requires multidisciplinary or it requires a low risk care. So the risk stratification is very, very important. Also from the administration point of view, when we are having a lot of patients, and we want to categorize the patient that this pregnancy is low risk and this pregnancy is having high risk. So what is high risk pregnancy? The stratification, 2 or 3 things which I wish to give message to all audiences, that what is high risk pregnancy, how to stratify high risk pregnancy in your OPD and during your antenatal care, and how this high risk pregnancy, some of the very, very basic facts which leads to high risk situation, and how we can improvise these patients in a high risk pregnancy. So pregnancy is a physiological, but any pre-existing disease or any unexpected illness of mother or fetus can complicate the pregnancy. So when we define that this pregnancy is high risk, when we have the probability of having adverse outcome either for the mother or the child, which is higher above the baseline population. We cannot consider the magnitude or what is the importance, but we enumerate that these are the high risk factor which is entitled to this particular pregnancy. So high risk pregnancy, to simply said, we can say whichever pregnancy can threaten health or life of the mother or her fetus is called high risk pregnancy. And the mother or fetus or neonate is at increased risk of morbidity or mortality before or after delivery. To simplify, we can define high risk pregnancy in such a way. So we can have 2 situations which every obstetrician in clinical practice face. A high-risk pregnancy comes to obstetrician with the poor obstetrical history or well-recognized medical complications. Like patient is having GDM, patient is already taking treatment of hypertension, patient is having a last intrauterine death or stillbirth. But the majority of the patients are those where we actually lose this patient. We lose to mark in our OPD that this patient is high risk, and suddenly we are facing the unexpected complications like abruptio, like sudden intrauterine growth retardation, and that leads to suboptimal result and so many inherent legal issues which are being faced by us, by our fraternity. So one is the clear-cut high risk when we plan the antenatal management, and one is when we are getting lost to it. And this is the one message which I want to give to all audience, is that in antenatal period, right from preconception, we have to stratify the patient into low risk or high risk, and that treat and give the surveillance protocol accordingly. So how can we do that? How can we do that as a clinician? There has been several high risk identification systems by many professional bodies. 2 things are important: any medical complication which is affecting mother and the bad obstetrical history, so that there was not a good outcome of that pregnancy. So we take a very good history, detailed history, either by us, by staff or by our resident, and we give different numerical values to these high risk factor. And it is one tip which I want to give, that flash on your antenatal card that this patient is having this risk factor, like this patient is having GDM, this patient is RH negative, so that when the patient comes into the emergency, you don't get lost and suddenly you come to face any unprecedented serious complication. So some of the well-recognized high-risk groups are extreme of age, obesity. This is very common. Nutritional deficiency is one of the very important aspect in low and middle income developing countries like India. And in this presentation, I will like to focus mostly on the nutritional aspect in relation to high-risk pregnancy. Hypertension, respiratory disease, epilepsy, renal disease, hemoglobinopathies, all these are high-risk situation. And in the perinatal history, very important: recurrent pregnancy loss, bad obstetrical history, preterm labor, multiple pregnancy, fetal anomalies, and assisted conception. So These are the complications which can develop during pregnancy, and these are the critical situations which we face all of a sudden like a bolt into the blue. In current scenario, every clinician will agree that in today obstetrical demographics, almost 30 to 40% pregnancy comes into category of high risk. This is Copeland scoring system, which is based on the history which you can include in your clinical practice. So scoring system, what does it mean? That first of all, it documents the effort that we have made the effort to identify and analyze high risk factor. If there is high risk factor, we want a multidisciplinary consultant like endocrine or like physician, like dietitian. We can plan our antenatal care, and thus pregnancy outcome can be optimized by medical intervention. So there can be 4 types of HRP, high risk pregnancy. There is high risk mother with a high risk infant like severe hypertension with intrauterine growth restriction. High risk mother with low risk infant like maternal asthma or history of venous thromboembolism. Low risk mother with high risk infant because patient is fine, but suddenly fetus is having anomaly or having growth retardation, and low risk mother with low risk fetus. It is very good practice that we categorize all our pregnant patients in one of these category, which serve as a useful template. So this is important change in our clinical practice. Now the second important landmark thing which have changed the obstetrics is that from the tradition obstetrics is that we used to call much less in the first and second trimester our patient, and we used to call more frequently in the third trimester because most obstetric adverse outcomes were unpredictable and we are going to face more complication in third trimester. But in last 10 to 15 years, this pyramid has changed, and 11 to 13 and 6 to 8 week visit has become very, very important because at 11 to 13 week with the focused antenatal care, that is inclusion of clinical history, ultrasound, Doppler, and the biochemical marker. 4 things add and you can predict so many high risk situations. So it is one of the very important sea change, and our all obstetrician should make note of it that the 11 to 13 week with the genetic sonogram, with the nucleotide assessment, with a good clinical history, we can categorize high risk patient as early as 11 to 13 week. When we in India, we are having 26 million deliveries and the medical personnel are very few. So it is also need of the administration, need of the health management that we categorize the patient into low and high risk. If it is low risk, you can say the patient can go into the minimal setting. But if it is a high risk, these patients need multidisciplinary and the regular care so that we can optimize the obstetrical outcome of these patients. So it is about 30 to 40% pregnancy belong to high risk in India, and it is again very, very important concern of our country that India contributes still to 19% of global maternal mortality. So there is a lot of responsibility on us. Now coming to this background, there is one question: is nutrition matters? Everybody will agree that the pregnancy is what creation of life, and life need energy and energy need nutrition. So nutrition is a science of food. It is a positive thing. And in last few years, last few decades, science has really forgotten that how the nutrition can affect everybody's life, emotion, and the soul. What is called as the comprehensive health. And dietetics is the practical application of principle of nutrition for the good outcome, for the good health. So pregnancy is a special situation. One life or 2 life is being created, and there is increase in nutritional requirement during pregnancy. Why? Because there is a increased maternal metabolism, tissue have to grow, fetal has to grow. And whenever there is a less dietary intake in either key macro or micronutrient, it has adverse impact. Some are seen and some are not seen on the pregnancy outcome and the neonatal health. Of course, the first is the diet. It is our food which should meet our nutritional requirement. But the pregnancy period is a time of increased demand, and we have to supplement it in a balanced way to our patients so that their needs are completed. So, as I said, there is increase in plasma volume and red cell, there is decreased concentration of nutrient, decreased binding protein, and the micronutrient. Now, in country like ours, we are already, like from the adolescent, we have the anemia, we have the macro and micronutrient deficiency, and when there is pregnancy, it adds fuel to fire. And it is, we know that an NFHS data, third and fourth, shows that 30 to 50% of pregnant women in our country suffer from nutritional deficiency. So it is a public health problem. Another very, very important question is that suddenly in last 10 to 15 years, we are facing a high rise in the metabolic disorder even in younger population. And this, many studies shows from the last 10 years that whatever disease we have in adulthood, they have the origin before birth, because fetus is malnutrition in utero, in neonatal period, and it persists into adulthood, and it is possible intergenerational effect. So non-communicable disease is a big burden for our country, and as an obstetrician, we can really intervene at the right in utero and help in our in making the fetus and neonatal healthy, as well as the adult population in next 10 years healthy. So maternal nutrition is an important determinant of embryonic and fetal growth. And one thing is the preconceptional care. When we intervene in adolescent, when we intervene a woman who is planning to have pregnancy, this is the time which is very, very important, because most organogenesis occur from 3 to 7 weeks of missed period. When the patient comes to us, this period has already gone. And the placental and fetal growth is most vulnerable to maternal nutrition during pre-implantation period, and it is a period of rapid placental development. So it highly signifies that every woman who is in reproductive age group has need of balanced and good nutritional status in preconception period. And this is the time when we should not miss this preconception period in our practice. So right from preconceptional period, what is the common pathology for bad obstetrical history? This is micronutrient, which I am going to discuss in the next 15 to 20 minutes. And one common basic feature for this bad obstetrical history can be hyperhomocystinemia. And how it came? Because it was shown hyperhomocystinemia in adult vascular disease. And all usually placental complications are related to vascular complication, thrombotic complication. And that's why there has been many research which shows that the hyperhomocystinemia can be one of the basic mechanisms which result to poor obstetrical outcome. What is homocysteine? It is an intermediate product in the metabolism of essential amino acid methionine. And what is involved in its metabolism? These are vitamins, folate, and cobalamin. Vitamin B6 also plays an important role. And when we have the deficiency of vitamin, folates, and cobalamin, it leads to elevated homocysteine plasma concentration. Beside this, MTHFR polymorphism, genetic polymorphism, is very important concern, which we will discuss today. And this is homocysteine, which is turned to methionine by the L-methyl folate, and which is converted to cysteine by the pyridoxal 5-phosphate. Whenever there is deficiency of these things, there is hyperhomocystinemia. So what causes hyperhomocystinemia? It is mutation in methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase genes, which cause the conversion of homocysteine to methionine and the cysteine. Beside this, the environmental factor, which are very important in our country, is the diet poor in folates and vitamin B12 with other vitamin deficiency. It is a risk factor of RPL, that is recurrent pregnancy loss, for pregnancy-induced hypertension, abruptio, and IUGR. So there has been a lot of things which can happen in any pregnancy which have the hyperhemocystonemia, and these are few latest research which I have quoted, that it shows that it is associated with lower placental weight, IUGR, congenital heart defect, recurrent pregnancy loss, meconium-stained amniotic fluid, oligohydramnios, when we have the increased homocystinemia. These are these papers, and I will like audience to review this. So vascular complications are associated with the hyperhomocystinemia, as well as the fetal complication like dural tube, congenital defect, intrauterine death retardation, meconium stent, and the IUGR. So 20 to 30% pregnancies are related to hypercystonemia. So I will like to draw your attention one by one to each and every micronutrient. There has been a big debate about the folic acid versus tetramethyl hydrofolate supplementation. And we have been giving folic acid since 10 to 20 years in public sector, private sector, in pre-conceptional. We give 400 to 500 microgram folic acid to everybody, because folic acid is important in formation of RBC, nerve function, in the construction of DNA molecules. So we all know that the folic acid is very, very important synthesis, play an important role in the genetic and the genetic makeup. It is 400 micrograms supplement which we have been given folic acid to our patient. But it reduces the high level of homocysteine. Now, what is the difference between the folic acid and the THMF? This is very, very important. So folic acid, we need certain sort of folic acid. There is no question about it. But what is L-methyl folate? It is very, very important to know. Folic acid actually is a chemical, and as it is, it does not have any biological function in our body. Folic acid convert to dihydrofolate, then to tetrahydrofolate, then the 5 to 10 methyl THF, and then L-methyl folate. So L-methyl folate is a folate which is biologically active in our system. It is a gene. MTHFR is a gene, and it is an enzyme. And mutation of this methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase enzyme is found in 40 to 50% of population. Some form of mutation is there. And these patients cannot convert folic acid to L-methyl folate. And that's why the folic acid is not effective what we are going. And it is actually just one piece of genetic mutation puzzle. So L-methyl folate is already broken for those who lack the ability to break down folic acid on their own. So if we give L-methyl folate, it is already biologically active, and it is not to be converted by the 4-step procedure. So as this chart shows, that the L-methyl folate is 3 times greater homocysteine reduction, 5 times more biologically available, and 9 times more concentration than the conventional folic acid. When there is mild MTHR deficiency because of genetic mutation, it is affecting 10% of the population, and it can cause MTHFR resorption, which result in hyperhemocystinemia, methylate reduction, and non-methylated folate increase. So, and now one important question is, when we give more folic acid, like more than 400 microgram, it competitively blocks the binding of folate to all folate receptor, and unmetabolized folic acid can be toxic for our body, and sometimes it can be carcinogenic. So another important thing is that the low dose of FMTHF is as good as the higher dose. It is more effective, and we don't have any unmetabolized folic acid in our system. So folic acid and TMHF, we will say that for high-risk pregnancy, actually methyl folate is a better option. It has got better result, and it has all the benefits, which is saying that it is natural form of folate available for the in vivo transport. It has no upper intake limit. It is well absorbed even when the GIT pH changes. It is bioavailable. It is not affected by metabolic effect. So we can conclude that the 5-MTHF to replace folic acid in treating MTHFR have got a marked efficiency marked good result in the prevention of neural tube defect, other congenital defect. It also have the potential of masking hematological symptom of vitamin B12 deficiency. It overcome metabolic defect which is caused by genetic polymorphism, and US FDA and European Food Standard also have approved product containing 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. So this is one message which we want to give. Now, beside folic acid, folic acid and TMHF, we have to have a different micronutrient, because nature is a balance. It is not a one-sided. And in our food, we really get so many things, and everyone is required in a right proportion and in a right dose. So what is B complex vitamin? Every practitioner prescribes so many vitamin complex to our patient. But in our pregnant patient, even public sector gives only iron and folic acid. Is that enough for the exaggerated need in the pregnancy and for the fetal growth? So we have to understand the basics of some vitamins which we tend to forget over the time, that all vitamin B, B6, B12, they actually act synergetically for so many metabolic process, for so many energy generation, and we have to consider the increased need of these micronutrient, all vitamins, and what is the optimum dosage of these micronutrient. So vitamin B12 deficiency in our vegetarian population, it is, and so many socio-economic thing as well. It is supposed to affect 25% of our pregnant women. And low vitamin B12 level can also lead to hyperemocystinemia with all the complications. B1 deficiency, that is thiamine, can impair fetal brain development. B2 and B3, that is riboflavin and niacin, has been also correlated with preeclampsia, congenital heart defect, neural tube defect, and low birth weight infant. And as vitamin B6, we are conventionally adding with antihistaminic for nausea and the pregnancy. So these are the dosage which is needed, B1, B2, B3 in the pregnancy, and we have to consider that each vitamin plays a very, very important role. So B12 is associated, it acts with the folate to reduce homocysteine level, and vitamin B6 level, if it is less, it has been shown to be associated with preterm labor. Now the preterm labor is also, actually it is 25% of our incidence of the preterm labor is found in the Indian population, and the care of a preterm baby is a huge economic, emotional, and the social expenditure. So anything which we can do to reduce preterm labor is also very, very important. Now vitamin C and E are the another thing. Vitamin C is water soluble and vitamin E is fat soluble, but it is the mystery of nature that they function synergetically to promote antioxidant defense, and they inhibit free radical formation to prevent oxidative stress. Now, in the current time, right from infertility to hypertensive disorder of pregnancy to the abruptio and the IUGR, we are really searching that what is this oxidative stress, because it is thought to be key mechanism underlying pathophysiology of many, many pregnancy complications, including preterm rupture of membrane, IUGR. Though in non-deficient status, we may not need supplement, but when there deficiency, if we supplement, it improves pregnancy outcome. And vitamin C also has one important another role, because it aids in the iron absorption, and anemia is also one of our very important problem. Vitamin A is another fat soluble vitamin. It is either from the retinoid or provitamin carotenoid, which are the vegetable source of the vitamin A, and in effect vision, growth, bone metabolism, immune function, gene transcription, and antioxidant activities. And another important thing is that vitamin A is also needed to support growth and tissue maintenance and the fetus, and vitamin A improve our immune section. But all the fat soluble vitamin, we should be very careful about the doses, and upper limit of 3000 microgram retinol is not recommended. Beyond that, and usually we have the limited dose of all fat soluble vitamin, what is vitamin A or the D. Vitamin D, again we know that it is a public health problem, and globally it is estimated that 40 to 90% of pregnant women are vitamin D deficient. out of which 15 to 84% can be severely deficient. It is more common in our population because of the dark skin as well as the low intake, and we are not having more and more lack of sunlight exposure. So it affects the neonatal bone growth as well as the pregnancy outcome, because it is found to be associated with gestational diabetes mellitus, preeclampsia, preterm birth, and the low birth weight babies. Beside this, as we have been seeing that the neonatal and the childhood asthma is very common nowadays, suddenly in last decade, and vitamin D also affect that. Vitamin D positively affects fetal development and the neonatal immune condition. So preventing and treating vitamin D deficiency is very, very important for optimizing maternal and the neonatal health. So these recommendations says that folic acid alone is not enough. Multivitamin micronutrient supplement is preferable to iron folic acid supplementation, especially in developing countries where multiple deficiencies are prevalent. And the suboptimal concentration of preconceptional folic acid, vitamin B12 and vitamin B6, if they occur together, they can increase the risk of spontaneous abortion. So one thing, this is the strong recommendation by the professional body that the women of reproductive age should be encouraged to take folic acid containing multivitamin supplement for the purpose of supporting healthy pregnancy outcome. So this is one thing which we have to change from our practice, from folic acid to methyl tetrahydrofolate for the high risk pregnancy, and from folic acid addition of the micronutrient in form of vitamins. A little bit about minerals and trace elements. As I say, the first thing is the iron deficiency. Anemia itself is a topic, but it constitutes and contributes to our 15 to 20% of maternal death. And we have we are passing anemia from generation to generation, and always pregnancy add fuel to fire. So it is iron demand. We know that all public health, private health give iron and folic acid to every woman for at least 100 days or the 6 months. But it is not enough. Why we are saying sometimes that the oral iron is not effective? Because we are not having the supplement required for the RBC generation, that is copper, protein, vitamin C, zinc, manganese, and the magnesium. So maternal anemia can be many-fold. It is iron deficiency, it is protein deficiency, it is worm infestation. It is a big problem. It is a big public health problem. So we are giving, as Foxy GCPR say, this is the iron folic acid supplementation. But today, considering high risk pregnancy, I'm focusing on the other thing which get missed from our view and missed from our practice. And we fail to know that why this patient is not having improvement in anemia and the pregnancy outcome. So this is the all thing that how the nutritional deprivation can affect the pregnancy outcome, periconceptional first trimester and in the late trimester, and any nutritional deficiency can cause it. So it is the slide which showing folic acid, iron, iodine, calcium, zinc. What does it do specifically? And in coming slide, I will a little describe the thing about the trace element. We have covered the vitamins and we just know what the trace elements do. Like we say in nature, whatever thing in minimal, which is even not seen, is important. In this universe, there is nothing which is not important, which is without reason. And the trace elements actually points to this fact. Zinc is the pregnancy requirement is 11 to 12 milligram. And when there is zinc deficiency, we have impaired immunity, IUGR, prolonged labor, and PIH, which Cochrane database shows. And zinc supplementation may reduce preterm birth by reducing maternal infection. However, zinc supplementation is more effective in the low income setting when we know that we are not having that healthy and that balanced diet. In the same way, magnesium in pregnancy helps build repair mother tissue, and it works with calcium in bone metabolism. And we know that the severe magnesium deficiency may add in causing severe preeclampsia, and it is a good thing to reduce the leg cramps, which is a very common complaint. Now, iodine. Now, this is again a very, very important thing. We know that 2% of population is having thyroid, hypothyroidism in our country. And nowadays, we are routinely having surveillance by the thyroid estimation, and we even treat the subclinical hypothyroidism. But only thyroxine supplementation will be effective or not. So we must be take care of this fact that approximate 1.8 billion people worldwide have iodine deficiency, and the South Asia, where India is there, have the biggest proportion. So iodine deficiency also can contribute to hypothyroidism. During pregnancy, we have the increased metabolic demand for the iodine. The thyroxine hormone is needed more, and iodine is not obtained. Usually, we obtain from the fortified salt. Besides this, we have a long range of belt where there is a deficiency of iodine in the water and in the food. So the iodine fortification of the salt is there, but it is usually we prefer the cooked food, so it is lost, and not all the people receive it, even the fortified salts. So the iodine deficiency in fetus can affect the thyroid function in the pregnancy, and it can affect the intellectual impairment to severe neurological damage and the physiological stunting. It can also cause pregnancy loss and infant mortality. So as we know, the thyroid disorder is the most common endocrine disorder in pregnancy, and we are really screening well for our patient. But in iodine and selenium deficient region, both deficiencies interact to affect the thyroid metabolism. So the dosage is usually 125 to 250 microgram. Beside this, copper, selenium, chromium, and manganese are other trace metals which all have important roles in certain enzyme function. It can be provided by a good diet, but we have to give sometimes the routine supplementation. So it is micronutrient, water-soluble vitamins, fat-soluble vitamins, and the trace elements. That makes our picture complete. So with this basic knowledge about what is high-risk pregnancy, how we should stratify the risk pregnancy in our antenatal period by scoring system, by the good first trimester ultrasound and the combined examination, how every folic acid, vitamin B12, B6, and the trace elements are important, especially iodine in a minimal requirement, and what is the dose which is needed to fulfill the spatial requirement of the pregnancy. So with this background, it is an era of evidence-based medicine, and professional bodies make useful recommendations so that every clinician is guided by the research, by the evidence all over the world. So these are the few papers and the few recommendations which I will like to communicate to our audience, that it is WHO and the UNICEF data which shows that what is the extra need for the pregnancy and pregnancy and the breastfeeding women. And it is the latest paper, that the multiple micronutrient supplementation may be a promising strategy for reducing adverse pregnancy outcome through improved nutritional and improving immune status. This is again a paper by the WHO that we should replace only folic acid by the multiple micronutrient multivitamin that really affects the pregnancy outcome. This is the Cochrane Review 2017, which shows that the giving multiple micronutrient supplementation reduce the risk of miscarriage. As we know, the human reproduction is very inefficient process, and 30 to 40% pregnancy go wasted. And the micronutrient deficiency can be one of the very, very important cause in the developing world. This is a paper which again shows that it reduces the spontaneous preterm birth. Preterm labor is another important issue, and it shows that how significantly multivitamins addition can reduce miscarriage, stillbirth, fetal death, and the preterm birth. So this is all papers which shows, this is important paper which shows that it can reduce the incidence as well as severity of the pregnancy induced hypertension, which is the journal from the clinical nutrition. And this is the paper which shows that when we add multiple micronutrients, especially in low and middle income countries where women are already deficient, it will improve the obstetrical outcome and the fetal growth. And this is again paper that it is very, very important for low and middle income countries. This is the FIGO, which is the international body which shows that we have to be very particular with the diet explanation, how to advise family and the woman what diet to take, how we can make the balanced diet, and we should advise them to take the multiple micronutrient vitamins so that, and one thing, it should not be more than one, because we cannot overload the woman with the vitamins. We have to be particular with the dosage also, especially vitamin A and vitamin D, which has got the low threshold for the toxicity, and we should give only in the prescribed and the required dose. Iodine is very important, and iron and folic acid and the tetrahydrofatty HMF. So it is hyperhomocystinemia, just to summarize, and the MTHFR polymorphism, which can cause placental abruptio, thromboembolic event, IUGR as well. Water-soluble vitamin play a great role in preventing oxidative stress. Fat-soluble vitamin A effect in many ways, because so many women complain when we take history that they cannot see in the evening, they cannot see in the night. So it is very important and very useful adjuvant in the treatment of anemia and improving immune function. Besides this, also decrease the risk of preeclampsia. And deficiency of mineral, zinc, manganese, copper, iodine, which can affect the structural abnormalities, and the deficiency of which can increase the risk of abortion. So it is what constitutes the bad obstetrical history. This is the slide which again shows that the hyper-L-methyl folate and pyridoxal 5-phosphate and vitamin B12 decrease risk of hyperhomocystinemia. Water-soluble vitamin are very important cofactor for energy metabolism and improve fetal development. Vitamin A and E improve birth weight and improve preeclampsia, and all the trace elements reduce incidence of stillbirth and reduce the incidence of structural nutrient. We cannot forget macronutrient. We cannot forget the macronutrient. So the protein, it should be always, nature is all about balance. So protein should be 15 to 20% of total food. Carbohydrates, one thing very important caution is that in the current era of obesity and the metabolic disorder, we should always guide the people to take the diet which is low glycemic index and having high fiber, because it modulates blood glucose level and hence may be beneficial. One important thing is that the fat is not always bad, and healthy fats like nuts, coconut, pure ghee is vital for baby brain development, and that should be encouraged. Beside this, omega-3 fatty acid and DHA also has been shown to prevent preterm labor. And the total energy requirement is 340 to 450 kilocalorie extra in second and third trimester. And both, again, we say that the disbalance is the disease actually. So the both low and high BMI may lack either nutritional quality or quantity. So we have to have with the optimum BMI. Something which we should not do, it is again alcohol and caffeine. Again, we say that everything is lost if we are not disciplined in our life. So even today, the 10% of the women take alcohol. Fortunately, it is not a common thing in India, but it can have many disorders. But the caffeine in the various forms like tea, cola, chocolate, cocos, it is very commonly taken. And during pregnancy, maternal clearance of caffeine is slowed down, and half-life is tripled in second to third trimester. So we should advocate the wholesome advice to our patient. What is protein, fat, carbohydrate balance, what type of carbohydrate, what type of fat, why vitamins, why folic acid, why trace element, and why we have to take the micronutrient and everything in consideration. So it is the summary that the pregnancy is a condition of high demand nutrition, high risk pregnancy can affect both mother and child health, and bad obstetrical history one of the major reason for high risk pregnancy, and multiple micronutrients should be supplemented from preconception till delivery for the good pregnancy outcome. So to the conclude, we know that it all there is in nature. Nature is the generous giver, but human made situations very, very difficult. We have the socio-economical, geographical, cultural inequalities. In rural area, women are not having good food. They are taking food still at the end of when every family member takes the food. They have no milk. They have no vegetables. They sell to the cities. So as an obstetrician and as a doctor, we should understand the people as they are, and whatever in our capacity, we should give them, we should advise them, we should counsel them so that they can have a good nutrition, good time. Pregnancy should be taken an opportunity to uplift the woman's health and to understand the knowledge of health to whole of the family members. Now we have a lockdown for 2 months, and you know that so many essential supplies was locked. People don't have vegetables, people don't have fruits. So the COVID-19 has put before us a great medical economical challenge. And as a doctor, we have to be very, very sensitive to all these things. So nutritional deficiency remains a public health concern in coming time, in coming 1 or 2 years. It may be more because of the so many COVID situation. We have to be very sensitive to special needs of these women, because it is the saying of the Nelson Mandela that test of any civilization is the measure of consideration and care which it gives to weaker and vulnerable members. Unfortunately, women still remains in the same group. Thank you very much. So thank you very much for the patient listening, and I will hand over to the Shubhojit and the Priyanka for the any question answer session.
Thank you so much, Manu, for a wonderful talk. And you have really enlightened us with lots of scientific concepts, the importance of multiple micronutrient supplementation, especially for high-risk pregnancy cases. So thank you so much, ma'am. There are various questions coming up. So a question by Dr. Krishna is, hello ma'am, is 1 mg of L-methylfolate a subtherapeutic dose? Is the question asked.
1 milligram of folic acid.
L-methylfolate.
No, actually. It is, you want to say that it is a suboptimal dose. It is a less dose.
Yeah.
Actually, L-methylfolate, what I described in my presentation as well, that the L-methylfolate is the biologically active folate in our body. And when we give folic acid, then it has to be converted into the dihydrofolate, then the tetrahydrofolate, then the L-methylfolate. So higher dose of folic acid is given, but the TMHF is the biologically available. It has got 5 times more availability in the body. So lower dose of the TMHF is as effective as the higher dose of folic acid. And secondly, I will like to emphasize that the higher dose of folic acid can cause toxicity because unmetabolized folic acid actually blocks the folate receptor and it can have the adverse effect. But the TMHF is biologically active and the final product. So lower dose are more effective, and even if we give the higher dose, it does not create toxicity like the folic acid supplementation.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. There are various queries coming up on vitamin A. So is vitamin A safe throughout pregnancy is what is the query asked.
Yes, that is an important concern because vitamin A, as it is, the higher doses are not at all not justified. But two things are there in our country. As we said, that the data shows that the almost 10 to 20% women in pregnancy are vitamin deficient. And sometimes we take history, patients say that I have got difficulty in the night vision. So these are the important thing that like point out to the vitamin A deficiency. So the dosage required is the what is in the pregnancy, that is 770 microgram. That is around 2000 units. So we have to be careful about the dosage, because higher dose can cause certain problems. It is found to be a little bit teratogenic, but the low dose of vitamin A, if the woman is deficient, is definitely needed. It affects positively for the correction of anemia. It caused the improvement in the vision and in the baby's vision and the growth disorder, and it has got a beneficial effect. But the dosage, we have to be careful that it should not be more than, never and ever more than 10,000, and the usually what we give is the 2,000 international.
Another query on multiple micronutrient supplementation is, specifically in BOH cases, does it have any impact for maternal cognition and mood?
Yes, vitamin. What you say? Just repeat your question. It is about vitamin A or the multiple? Yes.
No, on general multiple micronutrient supplementation, does it have any impact on maternal cognition and mood?
Yes, it should be. Actually, this is in our situations now, the mood or the psychological thing has catching our concern, actually, because we were over the time, the women were not that much of desire even to say about anything about mood. But any vitamin deficiency, as we know, for all people who are having vulnerable or who are having increased demand, because if their vitamin deficiency trace elements are less, then it will affect their immunity, it will affect their mood, their sense of well-being. So it is important, and it should have the good positive effect on their mood as well as on their immune function. It is actually, we say the sepsis is also a very, very important cause and the concern for the maternal morbidity and mortality. And anything which increases the immune function actually protect the women from the so many viral bacterial infection in today's COVID time. Everybody is talking about COVID. Now we are with the fourth phase of lockdown. We are over, and we know that we cannot eradicate COVID. We have to live with COVID in next 2 or 3 years or whatever time. So our immune function, we should be strong, and a good vitamin supplementation, especially in pregnancy, which is considered to be immunosuppressed state. So it adds to immunity and it adds to vital function. When the person is healthy, energetic, naturally our mood and the energy level will be better.
Ma'am, there's a question by Dr. Promila Malik. Is there any single tablet containing all vitamins, minerals, and trace elements available in pregnancy or required in pregnancy?
I think we are thankful to Acumentis, and I think yes, there are available, and it is we have in the thank you slide also we have it is all 9 BOH is available. So with this, and there can be few others, and I will say that yes, of course it is available, because actually they are having a very good combination, accumulating the evidence of all the research, because dosage combination, it is not going across any vitamin A, vitamin D level, iodine. They are balanced, and we are having the one thing in a full dose, so it is convenient as well. But we should prescribe only once a day. This also, yeah. I have like emphasized that it should not be more than once. It is a once a day, so that we don't overload any patient with anything.
In fact, many doctors are thanking me
Dr.
also.
Madhubala Sharma. Yeah, and Dr. Himali Jain has thanked you, ma'am, for a very wonderful presentation. There's another query, ma'am, which is related to when to start the multiple micronutrient supplementation. As it from pre-conception or during pregnancy, from the first trimester, second trimester? How do we do
Actually, nowadays, the woman comes to us in a pre-conceptional area, especially with a woman with the bad obstetrical history, like she is having abortions or stillbirth or congenital anomaly. And this is the time, especially in the bad obstetrical history, right time is the pre-conceptional, because when the patient is 15 to 20 overdue, only 14 to 20 days overdue, only then she comes with the UPT test positive. And by 20 days, actually 4 to 5 weeks, the important period of organogenesis has already been over. So, always patients say, abhi humko kisi din, there is neural tube defect, there is congenital defect. She said, I was showing you, I was consulting you since the beginning, why it happened. Because by 20 days, then we have to say that the spine is formed very, very early. So the preconceptional is the actually correct dose where it can be very, very effective. Anyway, if we lose the thing, if we lose that time, then we should start at the earliest, and it can be continued throughout the pregnancy.
A very important question which is very oftenly asked is it needed to check for MTHFR polymorphism before prescribing L-methylfolate?
No, actually, genetic polymorphism is not that easy to see. And all the research on genetics actually happens in the research setting. But whatever they find in their research, that this is very, very important observation, that 40 to 50% of people are having some sort of TMHFR genetic polymorphism. So we cannot actually already patient actually what is in developing world. Once at one side the woman is not having the healthy balanced diet, and there are so many deficient public health problem, and we cannot do the testing for genetic polymorphism, and even then because the treatment is not that costly also. So considering in the low risk patient, woman is perfectly fine, you can go away with the folic acid. But if the patient is high risk, she is having the bad obstetrical outcome, then it is a wise choice that we can replace the folic acid with the TMHF, and we add the micronutrient, which are because we cannot do the measurement of calcium, magnesium, anything, and that is not going. So the testing is actually not practical. It is not required because treatment is simple, but this knowledge is very, very important to have for our clinician, that the MTHFR and GTHFR polymorphism is very, very common thing in the human beings. There are a few questions I am seeing in the chat box.
Yes.
I wish to take them. This is thing. One is from Dr. Deepti Sharma. In preconception, either for 1 month or 3 months.
1 month.
So it is 3 months is okay, because we don't know actually when the woman is going to be pregnant, and the 3 months is a good time. But we can say whenever the patient comes and she says that she wants to plan pregnancy, or she's taking already infertility treatment, then this is the right time. So 3 months is better. But 1 month is actually, because we cannot ascertain that when the woman is going to be pregnant. Anyway, even preconception, if we are able to start, then it is a very good start for any high-risk pregnancy. And one question I'm also saying, for how many months vitamin A should be given?
Vitamin A should be given.
Vitamin A, it is a naughty question of always giving. We have the daily requirement of all the vitamins in our body, whether we are non-pregnant or the pregnant. Pregnancy is the time of high demand, and the vitamin A performs certain important function for the vision, for the bone metabolism, for the oxidative stress. So in the right dose, that is the requirement is 770 microgram, and that dose can be given to the patient to fulfill the requirement. And some is from the diet also. So this is the thing. It is not a treatment or the disease which we are supplementing what the situation of pregnancy demanded. Yes, I am taking Meher Afril, one question.
She's typing it.
Yeah. There's one question which got skipped. I guess it is most relevant, especially in today's scenario. Does multiple micronutrient helps in boosting the immunity of pregnant women?
And I think I have answered already question that anything which actually gives the energy takes so much, when our energy generation is okay, when there is reduced oxidative stress, then we will have the feeling of well-being, we will feel energetic, and when we will energetic, we feel good and the improved in the cognitive mode. And one thing I will really like to give audience to a little bit, always ask the women about their diet pattern, and sometimes we really find out that there is actually, you see, we are seeing the adolescent and the especially girls and the women who are going to be pregnant, they're not at all taking any fresh vegetable, they're not at all taking fresh, only potato, they are taking only junk food. And this is the thing, these people are really nutrition deficient, and the pregnancy poses a lot of complication among them. So this is the problem of civilization. Even in a good economic situation, the women are not having the good food. Can vitamin B continued in first trimester? This is a question I'm seeing in the chat box as well.
Yeah.
So yes, of course, vitamin. I think it is vitamin E, vitamin B. What is it? Vitamin B. It is a water-soluble vitamin, and it should B6 we are giving in all anti-emetic preparation as well. So we can safely give. There is no harm in it, and there will be benefit over it. Nice, yes. And something Nishad is there. Thank you. So many friends I am seeing in the chat box, and I owe thanks to them for joining. And it was a good. I got so many messages in like how to connect, and thank you very much for their interest and for their association.
There's one question which has just come up.
Yes, already taken antithyroid treatment, and so in pregnancy. Can you read out to me, Santoshi, this question?
It is, hello ma'am, if a patient is already taking hypothyroidism treatment in pregnancy, so I guess the question may be, can this multiple micronutrient supplementation be added in that? Because iodine content.
The question is actually twofold. One is the thyroid disorder are quite commonest endocrine disorder, and usually we think that they are autoimmune disorder. All the thyroid, be it a hypo, be it a hyper, we consider is an autoimmune disorder. The second aspect of this situation is this, that around what I say 1.8 billion, out of which 40% in South Asia, people are iodine deficient. So as a doctor, we usually go for TPO antibody titer for thyroid estimation, but iodine deficiency in diet can also contribute to hypothyroidism, and 125 to 200 microgram of iodine, if supplemented, it actually fulfills the need of extra pregnancy requirement. So that is the nutritional cause of hypothyroidism, and if we supplement, we can correct it. So fortified salt is now very common, but still you will see so many rural people still there is a tendency to take that khada salt what and it is because the iodized salt is a little costlier. So the situation is this, that, and a belt, a total sub-Himalayan belt, a lot of Indian population, the geographically we have the iodine deficiency. So that addition of iodine take care of that iodine deficient induced fetal cretinism or the mental retardation. So this is the true aspect of hypothyroidism. If patient is hypothyroid, she has to take altroxin or the thyroxine supplement. But iodine deficiency is the nutritional part of it. So
then one more patient, papaya. Many patients are taking papaya during pregnancy. How to counsel them?
Papaya is a good Indian think that the pregnancy, that no papaya, so many, I think papaya is it is from a very good food. It has nothing wrong for the pregnancy. Good fiber, good vitamins. Vitamin A is a colored food. So vitamin A is there, vitamin C is there, and so many problem of constipation can be taken care if the papita. But actually, no obstetrician is like afraid of taking. So papita nahi khana, because we don't want to go against family. So I don't think, as a medical person, I think papaya is a very good food. And why the papita bees was once upon a time was supposed to be abortifacient or something, so that myth goes in our mind. So obstetricians are also choosing not to struggle with this issue with papaya, but otherwise scientifically I don't see any reason to not to take this very cheap and very wonderful fruit.
Yeah, so somebody said, please dispose of the papaya during pregnancy.
There can be another thing, that the papaya seeds were considered once upon a time abortifacient, and secondly, maybe if you take a big amount, it can cause a little diarrhea. So sometimes pain in abdomen, but usually I don't think that much is taken. So otherwise, no fruit is bad. If patient is okay, then no fruit is. A papaya is a good food, even it has got its glycemic index is very low. So it is.
Dr. Silva, the role of DHA and micronutrients in first trimester. Micronutrients definitely is addressed, but the role of DHA in first trimester.
DHA is usually not, we don't prefer, as far as the routine practices, we don't give DHA in the first trimester, and it is supposed to improve the fetal cognitive function as well, and it is a good fat, but in first trimester we are not giving, and we should not give unless its safety is actually proven. So at the moment we are not prescribing DHA in first trimester.
Dr. Pragya Mishra has asked that it's a nice talk. Just deviating from your talk, is continuation of myo-inositol safe in pregnancy? Is what has been asked.
Myo-inositol, inositol. Actually, Pragya, thanks for joining. Also, it is actually considered only for the cases of they are having the impaired glucose tolerance, GDM patient, and the PCOS patient, where the insulin resistance is supposed to affect the pregnancy outcome. So first of all, it is for the specific set of women. They may be obese, they may be polycystic ovary syndrome, there may be history of strong risk of gestational diabetes mellitus, or they are already having diabetes mellitus. On these patients, myo-inositol, inositol has been given. Still, we don't have the final word for it, but many studies have shown that if it is continued for first and the trimester, that it reduces the incidence of gestational diabetes mellitus. In my clinical practice, I am not giving much because of the same concern which the Pragya is having, that it is safe or not. But in a particular set of patient, it can be considered to give to reduce incidence of, because it is also a food product. It is also a nutritional product, and it should not have any teratogenicity. So for only select group of patients, we can prescribe and we can consider it fair well, but not for a good maternal BMI and no high risk factor for polycystic ovaries or GTM or obesity. It has got, I think, no role for it.
Yeah.
Any questions? So
there are questions.
Micronutrients, I will ask for the Shilpa. DHA we are not giving in first trimester, but micronutrient, yes. And one thing again, the anemia in first trimester is now coming as one of the very important concern. For over the time, we didn't prescribe iron and we didn't prescribe many things in first trimester. But if the first trimester is anemic, we should start treatment of anemia with iron, folic acid, or TMHF with micronutrient, and we should consider it as an opportunity because organogenesis occur in first trimester, and we cannot omit that we will start the treatment in second trimester.
Yeah.
So,
Another question by Dr. Meenakshi Gupta. History of PIH, when to start calcium?
Calcium usually we start in the second trimester, that is around 1500 milligram a day. And calcium is again is the thing that the PIH, what you say, Meenakshi, for the prevention of severe preeclampsia or the preeclampsia. Calcium is useful. We give calcium because of the nutritional deficiency in our country, first of all, because almost all are women deficient in calcium and vitamin D, and we give the combination. As far as the prevention of PIH is concerned, in calcium deficient population, 1500 milligram calcium, that is usually which we divide in 2 doses, is supposed to prevent the severity or the even the prevention of the preeclampsia. So it is a good practice that we give, and we start in second trimester. We don't start in first trimester. For prevention, we start aspirin in the first trimester around 11 to 12 weeks, but calcium usually we start that in the just after completion of first trimester.
I think we also need to just tell names of doctors who thank Dr. Sadhana. I'll just quickly read the names.
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Krishna, Dr. Pushpu, Priyanka, then Dr. Pramila Malik, we already asked. Dr.
So
Sudha
Dr.
said,
Pramila, hello, I'm good to see you. She's a good friend and very much interested in academics always.
Dr. Sudha said, very informative. Thank you. Very nice presentation. Then Dr. Madhubala Sharma, very practical and to the point. Dr. Sadhana. Then Hemali Jain, thanks ma'am for such a informative talk. Then Radha Jina, very informative and well explained talk. Of course, Dr. Dipali, nice presentation. Thanks ma'am. Nirja Kapoor, Sadhana ji, it was well presented. From Jhansi.
It's good to listen from you.
Yeah, Dr. Mittal. This is Dr. Gunjan Mittal. Gunjan Mittal, thank you. Usha Singh, thanks. Dr. Sadhana ma'am for very informative talk. Meenakshi Gupta, very informative talk. Dr. Deepti Sharma, she asked a question. And then, of course, so like that, so many, of course, Meher Afreen thanked. Manisha thanked. So Anita was very happy. Then Manjit Mohi was nice presentation. Then Shilpa, of course. Dr. Pragya, of course, asked her question.
I'm seeing. I wish to have a question. Because Pragya ka question, yes. It is a comment. Thank you, Pragya, for your nice comment.
And Dr. Meenakshi Gupta, of course, she
asked. Meenakshi is our own society. Thank you, Meenakshi, for taking the time to join.
Smita Modi, thank you.
Madam Jina, who is our teacher. So
I know. Very senior, Smita Modi, thanked. Okay, Nilima, thanks. So Aarti Dipti, thanked. So all, and of course, then Dr. Pragya, thanked you for your answer. So Savita, thank you, ma'am. So it was a good day. I think good. Lot of doctors logged in, and I'm sure it was a very informative one. And in the present day context, I think this is very, very relevant. That's very important. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your wonderful presentation.
This opportunity.
Thank you. And we wish. And we wish now we'll do a live one face to face, because we wish, yes, virtual of course is there when there is nothing there, but it is always a pleasure to see face to face and have in a house full packed and then answer questions basically. I hope we'll see that. Sure. Thank you very much. Thanks
thank you so much,
madam. Thank you, and thank you to entire my backend team for supporting basically to make it successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kushbu, Shubhajit, Priyanka, everybody. Thank you. So we are leaving. Bye, and thank you everybody for joining with.
Thank you.
Patiently. Thank you.